What's up YouTube, Dal here from Zephyr War Games, and today I am bringing you an update to Bystial. Now, this, as a disclaimer, does not involve the branded fusion spells or anything like that. What it does involve is the Bystials. Now, I will take you through some other alternatives to this entire pile here in comparison to what you could add if you don't have access to these in order to still make Buster Bladers work as well as they possibly can do. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. I'm going to do the shout out now, so shout out to Alpha Yugioh. I actually took inspiration through one of his plays. So he did a video on Spankos. He's also got his own YouTube channel, so check both of those out. It'll go into more of a branded version of this deck, but I've kind of updated my personal version with it and then included the Bystials. So you start off with two of the OG Buster Blader with the Rest in Peace Kagasuchi art, but incredibly beautiful artwork on this one, and you do play the one Destruction Swordsman. So the reason you do 2 and 1 is you don't actually ever really want to see them in the hand. You're pretty much Foolish Barreling them all the time, and this is a Destruction Sword, so it can also be Foolish Barreled alongside a Buster Blader if you want. You've then got your main go-getter and your main starter of the deck being the Buster Whelp. This is the only one you want to normal summon. You don't want to be normal summoning anything else in this deck. This is the most important. However, the issue is, because it is the most important, it is just hand trap bait. Literally, it will be targeted by Veilers, Imperms, Ashes. So if your locals is flooded with hand traps, that's when you kind of want to adapt this this deck and start going, you know what, okay, I'm going to need to start using cross-out designators and everything I can to stop that happening. You then play the one Destruction Sword and the one Wizard. Now, Wizard is the graveyard, so obviously great if you have a tier heavy environment. And then obviously the Destruction Sword or the Buster Whelp is the extra deck summon. The big difference between these two as well, so both of these are Dragon Tuners, whereas this one's actually a Spellcaster, not a Tuner, and it's not a level 1. That is relevant for some of the cards we do play in the deck, but keep that in mind. Also, remember that this one has the effect that it can unequip itself. I believe this one does too, but it can unequip itself and summon itself to the board, which is actually important during your second turn. With the Bystials, and I'll mention this now, so with the Bystials themselves, they're actually more... they give you a better balance for being able to go first and second. Whereas without them, you don't play as many hand traps. You'd probably put in as many interruptive hand traps as possible. So that's where Crossout can become more irrelevant. That's where Ash Blossoms, Imperms, Veilers and everything else. I also play triple Jester Conflict. Now if you want to, you can actually play triple Soul Servant as well. Sorry, Magician Souls, not Soul Servant. Magician Souls, because they're level 1s. And the reason that's important is because level 1s with Where Art Thou is basically a little route where you can special on Conflict just at any point. You can only control one of them at a time. So you could control one, you activate Where Art Thou, you search out your Buster Whelp, you normal summon the Buster Whelp, get your search, you link those off. You can then special summon down another Jester, and then that can allow you to continue to link climb. But the idea is that you're going to be able to use some bridges. And obviously the bridges that I'm currently using in this deck is 2 Small World and 1 Where Art Thou. Now, it's a change of Small World purely because of the Bystials. Now, the reason the Bystials work really well with Small World is because you've got access to Darks, you've got access to Dragons, and you've also got access to Lights, as well as level 1s. So not only can Small World go from something like a Jester Conflict up to a Bystial, but it can also go in the other direction. The only cards you never really want to reveal from it are going to be like your Wizard and your Destruction Sword, because, you know, you don't really want to be losing them at all. So what you kind of want to keep in mind as well is that you can reveal any of your Bystials, and your Bystials can lead you to your Buster Whelp. So it's just ways of getting to both sides, which is why Small World's so good. And what I mean by that is technically what you could do is you could reveal any of your Dark Bystials. So I'll just show you all the Bystials now, actually. So we've got triple Magnamut, 1 double Druid Swarm, 1 Soronet, and then 2 Lubellion. But the idea is, and the reason I'm showing this is because of the bridge. So the Bystial that connects to the Whelp can obviously be any of them, but it also can be the Lubellion. So what you can do is you can reveal your Jester Conflict in hand. You can then reveal any of the Dark Bystials in the deck because they match by the attribute, but none of their attack, defense, or type stats or even levels will match. And then you get to reveal the Buster Whelp, because the Buster Whelp would then be a light. So the only thing that matches between the Dark Bystial and the Whelp is the fact that they are a dragon. On the flip side of it as well, you can reveal a Bystial Lubellion, you could go into a Druid Swarm, and then you can go into the Whelp. And again, that's your connection through there, because then the only thing that the Dark Bystials share with the Whelp is the fact that they're both dragons. So you can see where it goes through both ways. So, for example, if you open up 2 Buster Whelps, you can actually reveal a Buster Whelp and then reveal into any of the Bystials and then get into Lubellion. So you can see where you're going, all options possible. For the rest of the Bystial cards, we've got the 1 Regained and the 1 Branded Beast. And then the last 2 cards, so this is where it comes into Alpha Yugioh Shoutout, is the Fallen of Albaz. Now, you'll see that I don't play Branded Fusion, I don't play anything that kind of utilizes this, but what makes it so good and what kind of made me want to put the Bystials with this deck is that a Bystial plus the Whelp gives you such an incredibly powerful combo. Now, what I mean by that is you normal summon the Whelp. Whelp will then set you your trap card, which is ultimately going to lead you into the Buster Dragon plus the Buster Fusion, which is your board lock in general. But then you add on any of the Bystials. Now, the reason that's so good is, let's say we add the worst one in this scenario. So let's add on Sorinir, right? So what you do is you normally summon your Whelp will set you a trap. You link the Whelp off into Striker Dragon. Striker Dragon is your best one because it's a dragon, but you can also go into a Link Karibo, you can go into a Relinquish Animo if you want to as well. Then what you do is you can activate Sorinir to target the Whelp in the graveyard and then banish it. You special summon it. And then if it is sent from the graveyard, you get to send a Bystial monster. So then what you do is you then link off. Now, obviously, if you go for Striker Dragon, the idea is that you link Sorinir with Striker Dragon and you go into your spheres. You can then use Sorinir's effect to Foolish Burial or Lubellion for a follow-up of the next turn. And the reason that's important is because during your next turn, your Buster Dragon will actually self-destruct. So you have the ability of using the Bystial to send the Buster Dragon to the graveyard and then bring it back. Now, obviously, the more cards you add to the hand, the better it goes. The reason you get into spheres is then during your opponent's turn, you activate spheres and you actually decide to bounce one of their face-up spells and traps if they declare to activate it. Because what you'll do is you'll activate your trap card. Your trap card will then give you your Buster Lock, turning all of your opponent's monsters into dragons. And then off of spheres, you summon out your Fallen of Albaz. You use Fallen of Albaz's effect to discard any card, and then you contact fuse with their entire board, and that will get you into the Alba Lunatus. So that's kind of where the Alpha inspiration comes in, because I thought, wow, that's a sick one. Like, yes, okay, you could go a little bit more direct, but the idea is that you're probably already going to be connecting your Buster Dragon with a Buster Destruction Sword or the Wizard. So you're already looking at your opponent's graveyard if you go in Tears, and then you contact their board and they're just like, now what do I do? You've also got the Whelp that locks them out of the extra deck. So if they're now playing Bystials and they're putting boss monsters on board, even though you don't need to turn into dragons, you still just go Albaz, contact fuse a lot. It's just insane. And I was like, yo, that's really, really cool. So I thought I'd inspire that into this deck. Now, just before I move on to the other cards, obviously the rest of the deck does contain expensive staples. But if you don't own, considering these have only had 1 prince each, if you don't own this engine here, it's probably not worth playing the Albaz section unless you're going to go for branded. But your other options here can be Magician's Souls if you've got access to them. That's entirely up to you. You've then got more trap cards you can play. You can bounce, put Trap Trick up to 3 if you want to as well. You can also then look into other kind of cards, like that's where the hand traps come in. So if you're like, I really want to protect my Bystial, sorry, not Bystial, my Buster Whelp, then that's where your Cross-Out Designators comes in. That's where your Ash Blossoms, your Imperms. You just end up playing more hand traps to try and interact with your opponent. And then for the generic spell that we do play is the one Called by the Grave, again, because it's the only one that can protect us, apart from Imper. Really annoyingly. Double, triple tactics. So if your opponent activates an Ash or anything like that, you get the ability to look at their hand and then rip one from it. You could draw more, but the chances are, this is why the Bystials are so good, is they actually, they kind of implore your opponent to try and activate hand traps or try and interrupt you earlier on. And then that's when you can pretty much go, yoink, look at the hand, make sure you're clear to make your play, put anything back to the deck that would cause you an issues and push from there. Forbidden Droplet, this can also be bumped up to 3. You could go for something, you can't really play something like a Lava Golem in here, but you could main deck like Lightning Storms, Raigekis, Dark Holes. You do have budget options, it's just you need to have, with a deck like this, if you ignore the Bystials, the Buster Bladers themselves aren't very good at being able to go, right, okay, cool, I've got cards that are naturally going to break your board. They're actually quite a lot more about building a board up to then control it from that point on. So you need to be playing stuff like Forbidden Droplet to deal with your opponent's big issues, and then bait out interruptions, chain the stuff, make sure that your cards will always resolve. The trap cards, this is where this deck shines like no tomorrow. Triple Prologue, so this is your basically Fusion Summon Trap. And then Double Destruction, this is your, Synchro Summon Trap, this is your Fusion Summon Trap. And then you've got 2 Track Tricks, because the Track Tricks basically counts as another version of these. If ideally you want this one, is what you're going for. But then it can also count as Red Rain, I really like this card. I think a lot of people underestimate it. Yes, it is again more for going first. But the idea of this deck is you go first, you build up your lock board, your opponent can't break the lock board, and then you win. But with Red Rain, Red Rain, damn it. If you control a level 8 or higher synchro monster, which you will do because you'll control Buster Dragon, you then have the ability to banish all monsters on the field except the monster or monsters with the highest level. So, your Fusion is an 8, your Dragon is an 8. The only thing that you will lose if you leave it on the board is going to be your lower level Bystials, which by the time they've already summoned themselves, it doesn't matter. Now obviously it does become an issue if your opponent puts level 8s on the board, but then unless they're going to put a level 8 on the board that's going to threaten you, which when you have a Buster Lock plus you've got the Buster Dragon, very unlikely they're going to be able to do that. They're just not going to be able to break it. So, and then Red Rain gets you banish it, and then you also get the ability to reset it as well. If a Dark Synchro monster is Synchro summoned, which you do very easily, because spoiler, during your opponent's turn, if you're not going to use Buster Dragon as fodder for Lubellion, you actually use it as Synchro fodder to get into Hot Red as well. So that's it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. So this is where the deck just gets crazy good. So you play 2 of the Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. Now keep in mind, this is a note if you ever end up facing against Buster Blader. This card cannot attack directly, but what it can do is it can attack all your opponent's monsters and do piercing battle damage and gain 1,000 for every dragon your opponent has. It's busted. Buster Blader. You've then got 2 Buster Dragons. So this is what turns all your opponent's monsters into dragons. And then the pair of these two just, Marshall 4 did this deck dirty. Marshall 5 corrected it. Thank you. And then you've got the 1 Hot Red. Then for your Albaz targets, you've got your Mirror Jade and the Albalonatus. So the Albalonatus comboed off with the Buster Dragon just completely clears their board. But then if you want to go for a Mirror Jade, if your opponent puts a monster on the extra deck, you just go, okay, cool, I'll make my own Mirror Jade. Now, obviously, you would then use Mirror Jade to send the Albalonatus. Albalonatus could then search you out a fusion spell if you wanted to. So that's where you could play a Magicalized Fusion. You can go down different routes, be a bit more creative. But it kind of works out nicely that way. And then we play Link monsters. So for your Buster Whelp, you've got your Striker Dragon, your Link Karibo. Obviously, this could be Relinquish Anima if you want to. For your Link 2s, you've got your Buster Whelp, you've got your IP, you've got your Heavenly Spheres. Already kind of explained the combo and play with that one. For your Link 3s, you've got Unicorn, you've got Celine. Because believe it or not, one of your Buster Whelps is actually a spellcaster. So if you locked your opponent out of the graveyard, what you can do is you then have the ability, I believe, let me just double check. So the what is called is equipped to a monster cannot activate their effect. You can send an equipped card to the target destruction sword monster in your graveyard, accept itself. So that one gets you re-equipped. But the idea would be is that you actually do play stuff like Just a Conflict. You've got ways of getting into Celine quite easily. And then if you wanted to and you add in Magician's Souls, you also have the ability to do it that way as well. And then that's going to lead you into Access Code, which by the time you get there, you're probably going to have lights and darks in the graveyard. And you just get to go, cool, Access Code, banish pop, Access Code, banish pop, swinging for game. Not to mention as well, if you keep in mind and remember, the Regained lets you actually recycle your materials every time you banish them, or once per turn every time you banish. So if you banish during your turn, great. You banish during your opponent's turn, great. As long as it's light or dark, you're good to rock and roll. And it works out really, really nicely because you'll actually be banishing Striker Dragon off your Fusion Trap card for the Buster Bladers, because then that's how you're ideally going to be able to maintain the Buster Whelps and then maintain the lock as well. So Destruction Sword of Memory, and you get to rock and roll through that way. Anyway, I hope this has given you a bit of an insight. Like I said, I wanted to make it as strong as I possibly could, but I also wanted to provide as much information as possible. So I didn't want you guys to see it and go, oh, it's got Bystials, I can't play this now. I wanted you guys to see it and go, it's got Bystials, right, this is the strongest this deck can be, or this is the route to make this deck as strong as it can be. However, I don't have access to it. What other options do I have? And like I said, the whole core play of this deck resolves and revolves around the Buster Bladers themselves. Like getting the Buster Lot is just incredibly powerful no matter which way you spin it. So when you're looking at other options and everything else that you actually have quite a few ways of adapting this. I've done a profile before. Yes, it did include Verte Anaconda. However, you could actually just adapt that quite easily and then go more focused on more focused on like still Magician Styles extenders and everything else. Cut out the Verte Anaconda, still get the Bystial, and your opponent still can't play. So it's still very, very powerful on its own. If you add the Bystials to it, it just gets that bit stronger. It's a shame that the Buster Whelps are lights and darks. I would have loved them to have been Earths, and then you don't have to worry about the Bystials. But it is still very, very good. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Do like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, guys, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.